The City of Cross Lake, Monday, May 23rd, 2016. We'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we're ready. Is Mr. Finke here?
Yep.
John will present to us the conditions of the bid and the sale of the Cross Lake Communications.
All right. As a reminder to those, I am John Finke. I'm the management consultant that was hired by the subcommittee to find alternatives, strategic alternatives for Cross Lake Communications. And as Mayor Rowe indicated, the purpose of the meeting today is for me to present to the City Council the results of the competitive bid process for the assets of Cross Lake Communications. And then I'm going to have Mike Winkles come up and give the recommendation from the advisory board. Just kind of a reminder of the process that we ran. Because Cross Lake Communications is an entity of the city, we were required to follow the government sealed bid process. This means our valuation is limited to the important facts that we asked during the bid process. And if you remember right, we had the discussion at this meeting. These were the 5 things that were summarized in the request for bid document. And these items were both important to the advisory board and to the city council. One of those was the investments that the bidding company would continue to make in the existing infrastructure. The other was the purchase price. One was around staffing, keeping the office open, community involvement. The final one was the financial stability of the purchasing company. They wanted to make sure that they had the capabilities to operate the company going forward. We believe that the committee believes that all these criteria are met in both bids that we received. And I do have one other thing I wanted to say. Michael Mazer of Mazer Telecom Advisors is also here. He is the financial advisor that the subcommittee hired to help manage the financial aspects and review the financial perspectives of the bid. So he's here tonight to be available for questions as well. In addition to the 5 criteria that we just discussed, we also asked bidders to give us examples of the services that they offer in their current service areas, as well as their involvement in the communities that they serve. As you can see from the information that we sent the council, that both companies are also very much community-minded and focused on giving back to the communities. I think I had mentioned at one of the council meetings that we had 11 companies that had signed non-disclosure agreements and indicated that they might be interested in the assets of Cross Lake Communications. We had 4 very interested parties, all of which made the trip to Cross Lake and spent time with the staff and toured the community. At the end, we received 2 bids, which we opened a week ago, or I can't remember, the 16th? 16th. And really what we did is we evaluated the bids and summarized the bids based on the criteria that we just talked about. After we go through the summary of the bids, I'm also going to show how the offers that we received compared with the Charles Meade study that the city commissioned, or the subcommittee commissioned 2 years ago. So we will compare back the bids that we received to that analysis. And keep in mind, this is a sealed bid process, so there wasn't any negotiations going back to the companies and having further discussions. We opened the bids, we reviewed the information that was there in order to stay in compliance with the sealed bid criteria. So that's kind of what I have as we get started. So if you don't have any questions on the process, we'll get started looking through the criteria and the summary of that. So the companies that bid, again, were Consolidated Telecommunications Company, or CTC, and Trico Technologies. The purchase price for CTC was $5.2 million, and for Trico Technologies, it was $6.372 million. We have some kind of some incidental to the purchase price because both companies had included some additional criteria or some different additional information about how they would structure the transaction. And if you'll notice under CTC indicated that they will increase its board size by one person, and that one person would represent the former Cross Lake customers, and those customers would be able to elect this new board member. They also intend to admit Cross Lake customers as members of its cooperative company, allowing for related co-op benefits, including patronage refunds. So they thought it was important to let us know how they would get community involvement with the way they were going to manage the company. Trico, on the other hand, is a partnership that was comprised of three different companies: Emily Technologies, West Central Technologies Corp., they are in Sabika, Minnesota, and Rural Communications Holding Corporation, or BevCom, in Blue Earth, Minnesota. So it's a partnership with those companies all contributing to fund the purchase price and the management of the corporation. In addition to the purchase agreement that they were all asked to sign, because this was a partnership and a new entity, we also asked them to execute a transaction guarantee so that the city would be able to have a guarantee from the individual companies on the parent company, which is Trico. Trico is a new company, and we wanted to make sure that the companies behind that were going to guarantee the purchase agreement and the commitments that Trico was making. So those were all signed as well. In the bid response, they indicated that Emily would be responsible for managing the day-to-day operations for the Cross Lake service area. One of the other things that we asked for was investment in infrastructure. CTC indicated that they would spend a minimum, and they made sure that we know there's a minimum of $1.5 million in infrastructure improvements going forward, and that Trico Technologies indicated they would spend $2 million in making investments. The investment strategy, really, that CTC would indicate they would continue to upgrade the existing infrastructure to deliver increased broadband internet speeds to all Cross Lake customers. Indicated that they would upgrade the entertainment service offerings to CTC TV, which is their IP-based TV platform, and add new customer capabilities, such as robust search engines and things that are currently deployed in the CTC service area. In the packet of information that we gave you, it listed all of the data. We summarized it here, but we gave you the entire letter of all the qualifications and all the things that CTC and Trico indicated that they would do. We just tried to summarize the high points here. CTC also indicated that they have and would provide enhanced IP-based phone services for Cross Lake business customers, an enhanced hosted service that would enhance business capabilities in the Cross Lake area. Under the Trico Technologies, they indicated that through a combination of fiber to the home and VDSL2 plus technologies, which is really a technology that allows higher internet speeds over existing copper cables, that Trico would upgrade the existing infrastructure and provide increased bandwidth, broadband internet speeds to meet customer demand. The end goal was to have 100% fiber to the home for all Cross Lake customers, although there was no indication of the timing of when that would be. Just indicated that that was a long-term goal. TRISO also plans to improve the plant capacity with new capital investment in the internet backbone circuits. And like I said, if you read through all of the information around CTC, they provided a detailed a detailed description of how they have spent money investing in their broadband pipes and the internet feeds for the broadband pipes. And we'll talk about that under the financial piece here when they talk about what they've spent in their communities over the past 10 years. From a community standpoint, CTC has a management philosophy that includes being active in each of its service communities, as well as taking part in state and national communication industry organizations. CTC provided a complete list of management and employee involvement in their communities, and as you saw in the document, it's very extensive and very impressive. Not only includes the donation of time for those employees, but also for financial support to those same communities. On the TRICO side, since TRICO is a new company, they basically provided a history for each of the companies that shows the community involvement and the focus on their communities. TRICO pairs the customer and the community focus of the member-owned cooperative partners who will be overseeing day-to-day operations with the resources of a larger family-owned communications company. Each of the partners donates to its respective service communities financially and also contributes through employee volunteer participation. And they indicated that they would deploy the same type of philosophy in Cross Lake. From keep the office open for 3 years, both companies agreed that they would do that. And both companies also indicated that they had no plans to close the office or they planned to keep the office open indefinitely. So both of them approached that the same way.
Would you move that over? Oh, I see. Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay. Yeah. The first part of this, you can't see it's cut off on the left, is really around employee commitment, same wages and benefits. Both companies indicated that they would provide the employees with same terms and conditions, including wages and benefits that are substantially the same to those currently being provided. And really that was a requirement in the purchase agreement. Some of them went a little bit above that. CTC indicated that they would provide management employees, offering them a long-term employment opportunity at substantially similar, if not better, wages and benefits, and indicated that they will honor the union employees' collective bargaining agreement with IBE Local 949. That also was a requirement in the purchase document, and both companies agreed to that. TRICO basically indicated same terms and conditions, including wages and benefits, employees given credit for years of experience, and their indication was that the union employees would be hired under the Emily Cooperative Telephone Company union agreement, which is similar to Cross Lake union agreement. I guess the purchase agreement again says they have to assume the contract, so they will. This indicates their plan would be to roll it in with Emily. That would have to be negotiated with the union in order to make that happen. And their indication was that Cross Lake union employees would then have the opportunity to participate in union negotiations later in 2016. Again, that is something that the labor attorneys will become part of. But again, the terms of the contract require them to assume that agreement. We also asked, if there were any layoffs, how would employees be treated? Would there be severance? CTC indicated they do not currently have a severance policy. but they have no plan for any layoffs. However, if for some reason there were layoffs, CTC would offer severance to non-union employees and would negotiate severance with the IBEW for the union employees. Trico also said they had no plans to lay off any Cross Lake employees. However, if layoffs did occur, Trico would offer severance benefit to such employees of no less than 90 days pay and health benefits. We did receive audited financials from both companies. The next piece says, how will the transaction be financed? And CTC indicated that they were going to use a combination on cash on hand, which is, as of their balance sheet, last balance sheet was $2.6 million, plus RTFC loans consisting of a $3 million revolving line of credit and a $1 million non-revolving line of credit. So they definitely have the financial capability to finance the transaction. Trico indicated that they intend to use cash on hand. The three balance sheets combined have $12.759 million on them. And the partnership has also has a commitment letter from the First Bank of Blue Earth for another $3.5 million of a traditional loan if they would decide they wanted to borrow some money and put some debt financing against the company. So again, both companies have the financial capabilities to be able to meet their obligations that they are signing up for in the purchase agreement. We also ask how will future capital expenditures be financed? CTC indicated they would use a combination of the cash flows from Cross Lake operations and its RTFC credit facility to fund those capital expenditures. And Trico indicated that they would use cash flows from the Cross Lake operations to fund future capital expenditures. We also had, from a financial perspective, looked at what we expected the cash flows of Cross Lake Communications to be going forward. That was not shared with these companies. They made their own projections. We looked at projections, and our belief is that the cash flows from operations will be able to fund the capital expenditures of the $1.5 million and the $2 million that the companies indicated that they were going to spend. Operational experience and expertise. CTC certainly has an extensive experience in the telecommunications industry and has operated its cooperative company successfully for the past 66 years. CTC has the management experience as well as the depth of technical and operational experience necessary to support all facets of the current and future network technologies required for Cross Lake community or the Cross Lake community. Very comfortable with the expertise that they have and the experience that they have on the staff, and they've been very forward-looking in what they've rolled out in their own service areas. In addition, I know that Cross Lake Communication is also very familiar with CTC as they have managed and provided oversight for Cross Lake for the past 18 months. For the Trico Technologies, the combined management teams of the partners of Trico also have extensive industry experience in the telecommunications industry. BevCom has operated successfully for the past 120 years, while WCTA has done so for 66 years and ETC for more than 40 years. While Trico is a new entity, the management team, actually the combination of the teams, provide a depth of technical and operational experience to support all facets of the infrastructure as well. So again, from a management perspective, I believe both are very well qualified to be able to manage the operations. Investment strategy. Since 2010, CTC has invested heavily in its service area as well as outside its service area in adjacent CLEC areas to provide various fiber-to-the-home technologies, including investments in high-speed internet services, video enhancements, and home automation. CTC estimates that it has invested over $80 million in its communication infrastructure throughout its service areas in the last 10 years. So again, and you've seen that, they're very committed to making sure that the latest and greatest technologies are deployed in their communities. ETC, Emily Cooperative Telephone and WCTA both provide fiber to the home technologies in their service areas to 100% of their members. BevCom currently provides fiber to the home to approximately 20% of their customer base. In communities where the fiber to the home is not available, BevCom operates either a VDSL2 platform or coaxial cable TV systems to offer their high-speed data over cable modem services. And they indicated that their cable modem service areas are capable of receiving 90 megabit speeds. So that's kind of a summary of the information that was provided by both companies. And as I indicated, you guys all had a copy of the detailed letter that had a lot more information on both companies as you reviewed the information we provided you. So before I go into the study, the Charles Meade, and do a comparison for the offers, I guess I'd ask if there are any questions on the summary of the bids that was just presented.
John, I just have one. Could you explain, so everybody can hear the agreements regarding the investments down the road and how you're going to monitor that?
Yes. The asset purchase agreement, which the companies have signed and would get co-signed by the city, have a requirement in it that commits them to making the capital investments as they indicated. So 1.5 million for CTC's case, 2 million under TRICO. And on an annual basis, they will provide information to the city on the investments that they made the previous year. And at the end of the 5-year period, they're required to also provide the city a cumulative summary of the capital investments that they made in this community from their audited financial statements. So if they have not met the amount that they indicated, the city has legal options to go back and try to recover that money from the bidding company. So we tried to eliminate the ability to say we're going to do all this great stuff and then have them not follow through. But we do have a way to do that within the purchase agreement that gives us the ability to go back.
Thank you.
We, if I may say, we have some other in-depth financial issues buried in here, not the least of which is some of our EDA financing, an outstanding loan that is not transferable, and cash on hand. Is there going to be any, can we review the details of that as we go forward? Maybe Mike can help us with that. I don't know. Mr. Lyonnaise?
Absolutely. I can tell you how we've set the agreement up to do that, and we have talked about the economic development piece, and I'll let him address that. But the way it will work is that the bond that the city has against the revenue streams of Cross Lake Communications can not be paid off. So what will happen is, through a combination of the proceeds as well as the cash on hand, we will set up an escrow where we'll do what's called a bond defeasance, and from there it becomes a legal thing that that I can't explain. But basically, the lawyers will set up agreements. Money will be put into an escrow account from which the principal and the interest on that bond will be paid out of over the remaining life of the bond. So that'll get funded, and then Mike will continue to make payments, and at the end of that escrow, the bond will go away, and the money will be gone at the same
What
time.
is the balance on that bond owing?
2.4 million.
When does it terminate?
I believe 2021. So,
Okay.
and the current process has X amount of principal being paid and X amount of interest being paid annually, and we will put one big chunk of money into an account that will cover those payments over the life of the,
So we will figure, will we have to escrow the total amount owed plus interest?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
What happens to the cash on, liquidity of the phone company today? The cash on hand, I should say, probably liquidity is
Yes.
the term.
The majority of the cash transfers to the city. You're testing my memory now. Yeah, I believe it's 300,000 in working capital will be left at the company for a working capital adjustment, which will then be trued up as we get ready to close. So we did leave some cash in the company. You don't want to have a company that has no cash, so there is some cash in the company, and I believe we agreed 300,000 would be set aside and then trued up at closing. So we will be working with Mike to transfer the other cash out of the company prior to closing.
As I understand it, we also are going to have to pay back a federal grant for EDA.
I don't think that's true.
I think it is.
I think that, I think our plan will be, there are several options, one of which is to pay it back. I think the other is to talk to the successful bidding company to see if there is a way to then transfer that to the new co as a rural telecommunications carrier, just like Cross Lake Communications. So I think Mike has researched the options there. And if you want to come give him some information.
There's really a couple things you can do. In talking with the folks at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, because the city would be selling the phone company, we'd no longer be considered an eligible entity for those types of funds. So you've really got a couple options. You can either pay the original grant money back to the funding agency.
Well, how much was that, Mike?
It was $300,000, and then there was a 20% contribution made by the city. So the total original amount of the grant, including the city contribution, was the $300,000 plus the 60. So if the city were to decide to transfer the original grant proceeds back to U.S. Rural Development, my understanding is, you have to give a 30-day notice and then submit a plan to do that transfer back to the government. The other thing you can do is you can ask or request to transfer those funds to another qualified entity, subject to their approval, which would be, rural phone company.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Mike.
There are going to be a whole list of items that we need to really take care of between the signing and approval and the closing of the transaction. And the closing will take between 45 and 60 days as we get regulatory approvals from both state and federal agencies. So there will be a list of those made, and each one of them, we have already talked through a lot of them. We know what direction we're going. It's just a matter of putting those plans in place and executing on them now.
Thank
Okay.
you, John.
All right, the next piece is the Charles Meade study that was presented to the city of Cross Lake back in 2014, and you know, they talked about company trading analysis and transaction analysis. That says comparable transaction analysis. From a company trading standpoint, you know, really those multiples are very hard to compare. They're talking about large publicly traded companies, so really not very relevant in our case. I think the most relevant one here is the comparable M&A transaction multiples. And what you see in the relevant multiple range column is a 4.5 to 8.7 times. What you see in the Charles Meade reference range is a 4.5 to 5.5 times. So what they did is they looked at all the transactions that have taken place over a given time frame, actually going all the way back to 2009. And what you see in there is you have a wide range. And again, you have a wider range because it has to do with some of the size of some of the transactions that happened. Some of the transactions happened between, for example, Iowa Telecom and Windstream, huge companies with lots of corporate overhead. So what Charles Meade did is tried to pare it back to say, in the case of Cross Lake, what kind of multiples would we expect to get for Cross Lake Communications? That's where they came up with the 4.5 to 5.5 times. As you can see, the 846,000 in the column 214 projected EBITDA is what was projected as the EBITDA or the cash out of the operations in 2014. What you can see is that generated between $3.8 and $4.6 million in transaction price. What you can see below in my chicken scratch is $1.158 million, which is the actual 2015 EBITDA of Cross Lake Communications. So I'm going to show you how that factors into the same multiples here in a minute. But a lot of that has to do with the changes that were made in management and the cost structure, as well as the management of the company over the last 2 years. So what this graph shows is really that the range of the 4.5 to the 5.5, and then multiplied by the 1.158 gives you 5.21 million and 6.37 million. And then you can see that the CTC bid of 5.2 million came in at 4.49 or 4.5 times, and that the Trico bid came in at 6.372, and that equated to 5.5 times the trailing or the 2015 EBITDA of the company. So both bids, from a financial perspective, were within the ranges that were identified 2 years ago by Charles Meade, and really confirmed by Maser Telecom as the valuation multiple range that we should be looking at. Okay? I guess that's all of the presentation I have. I guess I would ask Mike, unless you have any other questions for me. I'd have Mike Winkles come up, and we had a meeting of the advisory board this morning, and he has the recommendation from the advisory board.
Okay, I'm Mike Winkles. I'm the chair of the advisory council. And through the years, it's always been our mission is to advise. And So that was our goal this morning, was to come up with what our best recommendation would be. Our thinking has always been back looking at the technical, at least mine has been, the technical capabilities, and so we tried to look at technical capabilities of both companies. They're both strong. We tried to answer, there were very legitimate questions, legitimate concerns on both companies that were brought up, and there were some loyalties also brought up, but we tried to talk through every one of them, and so the bottom line, it came down to a vote, and so our recommendation, and it was unanimous, was for Trico. Bottom line is the money was too far to overcome. I mean, it's substantial, and I think both companies are capable of providing the service to us that we would expect.
Before we move on, I realize that since this is a special meeting, a formal period of public comment is normally not entertained. However, I would like to know, I don't know that the public has had any opportunity to comment to this. Today, you have as much information as most any of us have. I would like any of our citizens who are present tonight who feel are inclined to speak, pro or con, I think we would like to hear from them. I think also none of the bidding parties are entitled to speak, so we'll set that out right away. And along with that, I think employees of the our own citizens of the Cross Lake Communications should also not come forward. But if there's any of the citizens here who feel that they have a comment, we must stay on subject. So it will be relative to Cross Lake Communications and its sale. We invite you now to step forward. You guys are going to take a load off my conscience. I'm seeing nobody. I assume that's where we are. I'll ask for it another time. Anybody want to step forward and speak? I think Robert says I should ask that one more time. Anybody want to step forward to speak? So be it. The public forum portion of this is closed. Thank you. Please, John.
Really, what we have left on the agenda is the resolution proposed, and it's 20 pages, no, it's 2 pages. I don't know what I need to, what I can tell you is that the lawyers that have been helping us, along with Brad, person, have kind of drafted the resolution. And I guess, do I read it?
No, I could maybe just quickly, really, all that's really relevant to the council in my mind would be number one. That's the big question for tonight is, first of all, are you ready to award the bid? Again, like we talked, you can reject all bids, or you could table, but if you want to award the bid to one of the two parties, we'd insert the name there. The rest of the resolution is really just the mechanics to get us from tonight to closing. You're authorizing us to complete the necessary documents to get it done. That's the rest of the resolution. So the main issue is that one sentence, number one there. Do you want to do this tonight, and if so, which company?
I certainly would invite members of the council to speak at this point if you're so inclined.
I guess comment I'd like to make is I'd like to thank the Cross Lake Communications Advisory Commission, the CTC management team that's been running our company for the past 2 years, Mr. Finke, and others involved, including the subcommittee. First off, this is considerably more than we thought we could get for it, and that valuation improved largely due to the efforts of the management and the Cross Lake Telephone Commission. And so I really want to thank those people, and also the staff at Cross Lake Telephone, too. This has been a trying time for them, but to improve the bottom line enough to end up netting the city roughly $1.5 million more than our best case scenario was, probably more like $2.5 million more that we thought we'd get. That's pretty impressive that they were able to turn that company around that quickly and get it in a position where we can have this conversation tonight.
Any other comments? It appears, do we need a motion at this point?
Yes.
I'll make the motion that we award the bid for the sale of Cross Lakes assets to Trico.
I'll second it.
Motion Nelson, second Hecox. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I do have one question, and I can ask it now. Do we have a list of assets that we are selling with this? I know there's assorted equipment. Some has been included, some is offered for independent sale. There's also a storage shed over on the maintenance facility grounds, which I understand is not part of the package. I don't know what is the contents of that building, but what is the agreement on
Yeah, no,
on
good.
assets here?
Good question. I mean, what we're looking at now is really a summary. I mean, we have a pretty thick and very extensive purchase agreement that clarifies that.
All right,
And the subcommittee has gone over that. The staff has helped us a lot to make sure we've got things pinned down, and there's no ambiguity. We've got it nailed down.
thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody.
Gary,
Anything?
Gary and Brad, thank you for all the work you did.
Thanks for tracking in.
Oh, the Cross Lake Communications only has one more meeting then coming up, or maybe two, depending upon how this goes.
Till the sale is finalized, they should be continuing to meet to review and make sure we're on track. And Mr. Finke is, I assume, going to be present to help that
Yeah,
clean up.
from basically, until closing, they continue to run it exactly how they're running it today.
Yep.
I mean, there will start to be meetings between Cross Lake Communications and Trico now, and they will begin to map out how the integration and things will work, but they cannot run the company until they officially close on the document. So you're correct, we'll continue to run it like we've been running it up until closing.
Thank you, John. We trust you guys. We'll keep it cooking. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second? All in favor?